Yes, 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 yes. Welcome to another great show of APN TV Media. We have a lot in store for you today. And you thought last week was off the chain. Oh, I've got some dynamic guests today for you. Okay, first guest coming up. Our first guest, his name is Weir, with his book titled "The Front Range Butcher." And our second guest coming on today, his name is Quentin Cope, and his book is titled "The Arabian." Both books going to be very interesting, so hold on to your seatbelts, and we'll be right back after this.
It says you speak Spanish and Korean.
I was born in Bolivia and raised in Queens. I seem to be having a bit of a family crisis right now.
I caught David with his dick up another guy's ass.
Well, I'm not crazy.
Is it cheating if it wasn't a woman?
You know, at the same time, there's always just something about him. That K-pop hair.
No way. It's gotta be like cold feet or something.
I don't think this is what happens when people say that.
It's your girl, Gia. You asshole. That was a good take.
Oh, was that gonna make you Insta famous?
You are such a dick, and you're late.
Sexuality is fluid. Please, cut your hippie shit.
I think the mature thing would be to talk it through and to see what they both need.
Be the rainbow unicorn. 比我较需要这个物件。
Welcome back, yes, welcome back. First guest, very interesting book titled, which is interesting, The Front Range Butcher. And Weir, are you up here? Are you here on the set?
I'm here.
Oh, yes. Dynamic book. So without further ado, let's do this. Let's start off. Tell us a little bit about that book. Matter of fact, tell us a little bit about the book.
Sure. The Front Range Butcher is actually the 7th in a series, a private detective Jarvis Mann. But in this book, he is going up against a serial killer, or at least who he thinks is a serial killer. It's a serial killer from 20 years ago out here in Denver. I live out in the Denver area, so the Front Range area. And he was a serial killer 20 years ago. About 16 people were murdered. And then suddenly he stopped. And 22 years pass, and the murders start happening again. And Jarvis is brought in by a reporter who's the father of a former girlfriend, and brought in to try to figure out who the killer is, as they can't seem to figure it out. Is it the person who did it? They had an idea who it was that did it 22 years ago, but they never could pin it on him. So now it's back, and they're thinking, well, is it the same guy? Well, he possibly can't be the killer because of some physical limitations he has now. So there's a lot of one-on-one between Jarvis and him. They go back and forth, a lot of psychological warfare between the two of them, trying to one-up each other. And it was really a fun book. I did a lot of research about serial killers, and it was a little scary sometimes reading about all the serial killers. And the FBI has several different types of killers and subcategories of killers and all that. So it was interesting getting into that, digging in deep, and I have to admit it actually caused a few bad dreams for me as well, writing the story about this brutal serial killer.
Then then the title itself, which is interesting. The title itself, does it have the same significance, or what was the reason, the way you written this title? What was the purpose, or why did you write the title in the way you did?
Yeah, the title basically came, when a lot of times when there's serial killers, the press a lot of times will give them a moniker of some kind, call them recently the Back Bay Killer, I think it was, out in California. And so the press actually named it. I felt like the Front Range Butcher, and it was the way he killed his victims. He actually, on the cover, you can see there's a picture of the Front Range, and there's a scalpel cutting down the center of the cover, so giving an indication of how he was killing his victims. And I have a lot of third person. There's some third person in the book where the murderer is catching his victims and what he does to them. I try not to get overly graphic, but and I do leave some to the imagination, but there is some moments in there where you realize what this person is doing to his victims, which is horrible. And they're all female, basically. 99% of his victims, he had a couple of victims, but there were different reasons why they were killed, and that comes up in the book as well. So interesting. Because the way the book seems like, well, we'll get to that about the series of the book, but if I understand this correctly, the story deals with you as a protagonist. Okay, so P.I. Jarvis Mann going eye to eye with a serial killer. What type of research did you need to? You know what? Yes, I did it that way. The research. Was this strenuous? Was a lot of research? And putting this book together? Yeah, there really was a lot of research going back and looking through. You always hear a little bit about serial killers, but I went back and looked at several. Like Ted Bundy was a very big name serial killer who actually started on the West Coast and went across the country, actually came through Colorado and was actually captured here and then escaped. And he used his good looks to lure his victims. So a lot of times, people say, well, couldn't you tell they were a serial killer? Well, it's not like, they're walking around with a shirt on saying, hi, I'm a serial killer. Many times they're trying to blend into the population and taking advantage of the good nature sometimes of people. Bundy he would often walk with crutches and a fake cast, and act like he was hurt, asking women for help, and then he would drug them and take them off. And many others, and it was very, very scary. And like I said, it's almost like a David Letterman top 10 list gone awry, because you look at all these, you do these searches on Google and you type in serial killer and you get 1 million hits, so you got to narrow it down, and it's just like, wow. And then they rank them sometimes, who was the most notorious serial killer. So it was quite enlightening reading about it, and scary at the same time. Unfortunately, if these people are among us. And I tried to make my character my supposed serial killer, and whether he is or not, you'll find out if you read the book. He's very smart. He reads a lot, and I also brought in there types of books. What types of books would a serial killer read? And I even polled some of my friends, folks out there who follow me, and say, well, what do you think a serial killer would read? And there was a lot, In Cold Blood was a great book, A Clockwork Orange. There was a lot of them. So I kind of worked that into it as well. So, Yeah, yes, tons of research on it because I wanted to make sure my killers were at least fairly authentic.
Very good, very good. Now, with that, make sure I didn't step too far out of bounds, but I would call it almost like a book within a book in a good way, where, like you say, the serial killer. The serial killer is learning by studying. Is that correct?
Yes, he watches his victims, picks out his victims. He's looking for a certain type of victim, and he's out there and he waits and watches and for the right moment to grab them, which is what a lot of serial killers do. They don't just randomly pick victims. There's usually a reason why they pick them, and they're very they study a lot on people and looking for that perfect woman. In this case, the killers are looking for a certain woman, but still trying to be different. He's trying to go to different areas, not trying to follow too many patterns, not the same areas in the city. And the Front Range area here is quite large, so a lot of towns. And he's trying to mix it up to try to keep the FBI and our private detective off guard.
But okay, and then that would make sense. Do you this is the 7th book in the series, is that correct?
Yes, Jarvis is he's been around since I first published a short story back in 2014. Totally independently published, and that was the first. It was in the series, and I had actually written it like 25 years ago, and decided with indie publishing to see if I could publish it. Updated it. It was called The Case of the Missing Bubblegum Card, and he helps a young man find a missing Ernie Banks baseball card, which is very valuable, a rookie card even, and just kind of a general introduction to the detective. And I had a lot of beta readers and stuff, so this would make a great series. He's a great character. Jarvis Mann would be a great. And I went from there with the next full novel, which was Tracking a Shadow. So he's evolved. He's kind of that hard-boiled detective, but in modern times, with a lot of as many faults as virtues, as I say. And he gets a not very good boyfriend a lot of times. His love life is not always the best, and but he's tough and he's witty. And he tries to go the distance for his clients, even though a lot of times his clients are not very forthcoming as well.
Well, then, you know what? I would like to help promote, give a little opening to the other books. Is there a way you can narrow a little bit about each one up to the point of this book, so that because it's the 7th of the series?
Sure.
Maybe there's those out there that haven't read the beginning up to that point, and maybe you have something, just a little bit, just a dash, just a little taste of each one to bring it up to the reason that draws our interest into your 7th installment, or is it 8th installment?
Yeah, it's the 7th.
Oh, 7th installment. Yes.
Yep.
The 7th installment.
Yeah, the case of the missing bubblegum card. I already mentioned that one, and it's actually free on Amazon and most other ebook retailers, so anyone can download it for free.
Beautiful.
About an 8,000-word short story. The next book is Tracking a Shadow, where his client comes to him, and she's being stalked, and he's trying to figure out who's stalking her. He narrows it down to 3 suspects, but of course nothing is what it seems. There's a lot of twists and turns in that book. And with a little bit of a surprising ending. I try to do surprising endings. The next book is called Twice as Fatal, and in that one is 2 cases that end up coming together. Football player who's having concussion issues, which is a very common theme these days in sports, and he's getting involved with bad people. And then his landlord's husband is cheating, and the 2 cases kind of merge together with a big wild conclusion. And then Blood Brothers he's helping his brother out of a jam. His brother is involved with some people he shouldn't be. He goes back to his hometown, which is Des Moines, Iowa, which is where I grew up, where I moved to Colorado. So he helps his brother out of that jam, and a lot of backstory on Jarvis in that one as well, how he grew up and how he kind of became the man he was as a child. So there's a lot of backstory in that. And then Dead Man Code is the next one, and that's where a computer engineer is murdered, and they think it's a robbery, but he starts, Jarvis is hired, he started by his wife, and he starts digging deeper, and he finds out that it's a fictional tech company, and he finds out that tech company is involved with some shady doings with the Russians and the Chinese mobsters. Again, very real world, a lot like what's going on in the world these days with computer hacking. And then the next one was a novella, a very short story called The Case of the Invisible Souls. And in that one, he helps a homeless veteran out on the streets to find out why some of his other homeless brethren on the streets are disappearing from the area where he's at. So so that one leads up then to the Front Range Butcher. And there's actually a bad guy in The Invisible Souls that we see a glimpse of in Invisible Souls that is pretty prevalent also in the Front Range Butcher.
Interesting. Now, you've written this book in classic, right? So it'd be more like a hard-boiled style classic?
Yeah, it's from his eyes, first person, so you're seeing it very much like the detectives of old, the Raymond Chandlers. Robert B. Parker was I really enjoyed Robert B. Parker, who passed away in 2010 in his Spencer series. So yes, but it's very much the hard-boiled, a little bit of noir style, but in modern times and modern storylines. But you're seeing it through his eyes, so everybody always says, "Are you Jarvis?" They always ask me that question. Are you Jarvis Man, since it's written that way? And I said, well, I wish I was as tough as he was. And though I've been married for 20-some years, even when I was single, I was never the ladies' man he was. But his sense of humor is very much me. He has that kind of snarky sense of humor. Even when someone's kicking his butt, he's cracking jokes, trying to get out of situations when he's in situations where they're dangerous. He tries to use humor to try to throw his opponent off guard a little bit.
Oh, very good, very good. I'm wondering, maybe another couple more questions, but so what for your readers and viewers? Did you always want to be a writer?
I did. I wrote when I was a teenager. I wrote a lot of poetry and stuff to deal with teenage angst, as I often tell people. And I wrote 3 novels way before the indie days, back in the 80s, that were never published. Tried to get them published, but never could get my foot in the door. But I always like writing. I have these ideas in my head. They're always running around in my head, and the way to get them out of my head is to write them down. So now, I write to deal with middle-aged angst, I guess you would say, living that world vicariously through Jarvis. But I've always enjoyed it. When I got married and had a daughter, I kind of put it on the back burner as she grew up because I wanted to spend a lot of time with her. She's now going to be going to college next year, and as she got to her teen years, yes. I enjoyed yes. Getting those days. But then I started getting back into the writing again, and hopefully can be successful at it. So hopefully I can make a living at it.
Oh, it looks like you're already a career author, and the series that this is the 7th installment. Or you could continue write. Are we going to be looking for maybe an 8th installment if possible?
Yeah, I'm about 85,000 words, maybe a little more than halfway through, depending on how it goes, in the next book, and it's called Man in the Crossfire. M-A-N-N, his last name in the Crossfire. And there's actually a storyline that's in the Front Range Butcher that kind of carries over into this book. It's not a total teaser at the end of Front Range Butcher, but in this book, he's going to be the storyline. He's actually going to go to California. He's going to be in the San Diego, LA area, going back and forth between Denver, helping out a former associate who has been murdered, trying to figure out what's going on, and he's still dealing with the aftermath of dealing with the serial killer. Going face to face has had some psychological effects on him, having to deal with such a monster, you know, affecting his dreams and his mind and everything else. And then I've got another book that I'm working on that's outside of the Jarvis Man series, that's kind of just in the beginning stages and very, very beginning, but I may work on that in the future and try to do something a little bit outside of Jarvis.
Yes. And finally, tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, for your readers and viewers, I know, put you on the spot here, but I want to bring this back also, since to tell a little bit about yourself. You mentioned Ted Bundy. Anybody remember Ted Bundy, the serial killer? Okay, I was thinking about the Zodiac killer and stuff like that too. You mentioned, and then I started thinking about Ted Bundy. But Ted Bundy was in Colorado. He got captured in Colorado.
Yes. Yeah, he actually started in California and then got away and ended up in Colorado. And he was actually in the federal prison here and escaped.
Wow.
From a courtroom. I think he got his way, somehow got loose during one of the hearings or whatever, and escaped and ended up in Florida is where they caught him again. And then he escaped again in Florida, and then they finally caught him again and finally put him away. But he was quite a crazy one. And you mentioned the Zodiac killer. I did a lot of research on him, and of course they've never caught the Zodiac killer. There's been a lot of debate on who it really was that did it, but he was never caught. So yes, I did a lot of research on that, and you know, Jeffrey Dahmer is another horrible serial killer. But there have been, you know, unfortunately, there's just been too many to name completely. It's a little scary.
I was thinking the same thing. That is kind of scary that you have so many serial killers, and the way they grew up and they actually study some type of craft just to become a serial killer. But that's sad. That's sad.
Yeah, and there's no one thing that triggers them to be a serial killer. Some believe they were born that way. Sometimes there's a lot of talk about a genetic issue. You know, some obviously were raised in a poor environment with poor parents that abuse them as well, and they carry it out. So usually in their teenage years, a lot of times they'll begin with animals, cats, dogs, and then go from there.
That's sick. That's
yes,
sick.
It is.
But you know what? They need help too. We say they need help, and they need loving too, huh? They need loving to change their ways, but don't change their ways. I guess they'll get prison loving. All right. You know what? I know I interrupted that, but just one more thing. In the publishing industry, you have anything to share with your readers and viewers about writing?
Well, the biggest thing is if you want to write, you got to sit down and write. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. There's always distractions and things to do, but you really got to sit down, try to write every day if you can. And I'm one of those that don't do that. And then, you know, don't give up. You know, there's independent authors, but, you know, a person like J.K. Rowling was rejected who knows how many times before her Harry Potter series. And now she's a multi-millionaire, maybe billionaire from all that. So write what you love is the other thing. What you enjoy, what you like to read, what you like to write, and write it, and then get as much editing help as you can out there. Unfortunately, it's an expensive business. Don't think you're going to make a lot of money at it, especially as an independent author. So if you're lucky, you can, but do it because you love it. Don't do it because you're going to make a living at it.
Very good, very good. Thank you, thank you. Yes. All real, everybody. Since you're right, the other one, even though I'm looking for a near future that I would like for you to be able to come back on the show just to share with us a little bit about your, a bit more about each book. Since we know this is your 7th series, so that means we'll have to backtrack a little, get a little bit more detail into it, and then we'll move into your 8th one once that becomes, published. But I'd like to see if we can get you back as soon as possible, if that's possible. If that is, it's to your choosing. What do you think?
Sure. Oh yeah, I'm always happy to be on. Everyone can find my books on Amazon, and my art website is rweir.net. So you can find me out there. And I say a lot of things. Like I said, the first short story is free. People sign up for my newsletter on the website. I give them the first ebook novel, Tracking a Shadow, for free. So they can get a taste of my writing, and hopefully they'll buy the rest of the series.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I look forward to seeing their future. Thank you, R. Weir. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate it. Have a good time.
Now, today, everybody, our second guest that's coming in will be Quentin Cope and with the Arabian, and we'll be right back after these messages. Yes. Welcome back. You know what? Let's go into our second guest. You know what? Before I go to second guest, I'm gonna let you know that this is going to be another treat for you. And for those of you out there that thought we wouldn't be a part of that pushing the envelope, yes, we will be sharing an adult erotic thriller. Yeah. Ooh. And it's called, this book is titled The Arabian by Quentin Cope. Quentin, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, ready to go.
Yes. And you're from the UK.
Yes, I'm from the UK.
All the way across
in the north of England.
Excellent. I wish I could. When I was in the military, I had my chance to be stationed in England. Man, I wish I would have went. I got to come there and visit. All of your authors up there, you have beautiful creative writing. I mean, excellent creative writing. As a matter of fact, up to where you're at, there's an author by the name of, I don't know if you know her, by Maxine Daniels.
No, it doesn't ring any particular bells with me, unfortunately.
Oh, yes. She's a pretty good writer up there as well. But let's talk about your book here. Okay. As a matter of fact, let's start off this way. Let's start off with tell us a little bit about yourself as a writer.
Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate actually to have spent a life engaged in world travel, and mostly at somebody else's expense, which is even better. When I finally slowed down enough to realise that Rolling Stones don't really gather any moss, then I felt the only sensible finale was to write about my experiences and characterise people I've truly known, and weave some storylines around real events of the time.
Very good.
I consider the stories I write to be narratives that matter. And I'm not afraid to approach difficult subjects, as evidenced by the content and words inscribed on the pages of the Arabian.
Excellent.
I think especially of ones that reflect accurately the reality of a particular period. For those of my readers who enjoy erotic thrillers with an historical twist, fictional characters intertwined with real events, and storylines that will keep the reader turning the page, then perhaps this latest offering from me is the Arabian is particularly for them.
Wow. How long have you been writing?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
How long have you been writing?
Right, well, in one form or another for quite a few years. In fact, my first book, Nostradamus, The Last Christmas, came out in 1984. But it's only since around 2011 that I decided to seriously play about with words on a full-time basis.
So wait a minute. So you have more than one book out?
Oh yes, this is my 18th book in print at the moment.
Woo! Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh yes, another career author. Yeah. So are your books versatile? Are they versatile, or I mean, in other words, different types of genres, or are they all based upon erotic thrillers?
No, this is my first erotic thriller. Mainly, I write about historical fiction in my novels. I also write books for writers, educational books. I also write biographies. I've done 1 or 2 biographies, and so quite a good mix, really. But my real heart is in the novel, in a good book, well presented, a story well told, and preferably linked with historical fiction in some form or another.
Yeah, now you've got me check out some of these other books here, because I think I'd like the guests and your viewers and readers to check out your versatility. I see that. You know what? Let's start off here. Tell us a little bit about the Arabian.
Well, the Arabian has taken over a year to write and edit, and I emphasize edit, as any writer will tell you. It may take 6 months to write a book and probably another 6 months to edit it. So for me, a year is a normal time frame for a full-length novel. When the first manuscript was produced, it stood at over 80,000 words and finally edited down to about 66,000 words. And like many other writers, I find that the editing process can take often much longer than the writing.
I know I'm probably going to go off the left base here, but from looking at your other books, seems like I saw this before. You also help others in writing?
Yes, I do.
Very good.
I write books really telling other authors who wish to be authors, who wish to write on a full-time basis, how my trials and tribulations and how I came to do what I'm doing, and pass them whatever tips I'm able to pass on the way.
Yes, yes, you're right. You know what's funny is I thought about that. That there's authors and writers, or I can say authors or writers or author writers. And the reason why I say it's because you can be an author and you have a story to tell. You can say it in a paragraph. So it's like ghostwriting. But you have a writer who can expound on the subject matter that you give them. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, I think that's it in a nutshell, yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Wow, you have, oh my goodness, the books are incredible. I mean, whoo. So I threw that out there for everybody. So all of you can see that we also have, I'm going to go down a couple of this here. Writer's Useful Phrases, the Writer's Useful Compendium. You also have, then he goes into books where, like, his novel Sins of a Stranger, and the Unicorn Conspiracy. That's been a. I like that.
It was one of my early books, and a very popular book it was too.
Yes. And the Lithium Prediction. Oh my gosh, you got some. And really, the Doxany Legacy?
Yes, the Doxany Legacy, yeah.
Wow, you have, oh my gosh. You have enough to fill at least part of a shelf inside of a library. But let's go on back to, just let everybody know that he's got a lot of versatility, a lot of versatile books, and also as well as the credibility to be able to share and teach about writing and creative writing, and how to break the rules, know when to break them, and there's a subject matter where you actually try to what they say, that you're not supposed to break a certain area of the rule, that you actually can. It depends on the creativity of the writing. Is there anything you want to elaborate about that, about writing?
I think the main and the most important quality is a passion to write.
Very good.
I go to work every single day, and I think if you're going to enjoy writing, that's what you need to do. You need to spend a certain amount of hours every single day putting down words, searching words, researching words, creating words even, and playing with them. And I love doing all of that. It's not hard work when words begin to flow. And I, for example, won't leave my desk until I've finished 1,000 words. And that for me may mean writing 1,500 or 3,000 words. But 1,000 words a day for me means I can predict when a novel is going to be finished and complete. It gives me a target, it gives me incentive, and it gives me enjoyment.
Very good, very good. That's what you do. Get it right. Don't worry about how many words or pages. Just write and enjoy it. Have the passion to want to write. Yeah. This is not class where you're going to be tested in your own creativity. That's not what it's all about. It's being to have the ability and the talent to just enjoy writing. Enjoy writing. So you're right. Yeah, you're right. You're very right. You're very right in the writing. I'll say that. But let's get back to I don't know. I'm stuck in Arabian, so let's get back to Arabian. Can you tell us a little bit more about the book, The Arabian? The storyline is actually about a strong woman, and I write in a lot of my novels about strong women, women who are not afraid to take on circumstances and take on individuals that perhaps other people may even shy away from. And also I link that to my time in the Middle East, Yes.
I was actually living in Dubai, which is the scenario for the majority of this work, and I was actually living there at the time. So I knew some of the characters. Some of the characters have been a little bit expanded upon, but in general, the places that you read about in the book are real places. They were real at the time, and often the people involved were real at the time. And I've changed a few names here and there, but in general, it's about a real experience and about strong women. And there's a little twist at the end, which hopefully my readers will find amusing. Let's put it that way.
Also, a look at what I'm seeing here is that that your this departure from the base concept of your other novels. Matter of fact, yeah, what propelled you to move away? It seems like you get 3 sections here, I believe. Okay, well, from the you've got your basic. Well, you actually have some suspense thriller novels that I'm looking at, and then you also have about the teaching, about writing, but then you had departed from those to go into the erotic genre. How did that come about? How was you able to perform that?
To be absolutely honest with you, it started out as a thriller, and the strength of the character. I felt that the story couldn't be told without preying upon the strength of the main character, and to leave out the fact that she was being sexually exploited and sexually involved with 1 or 2 people. To leave out the description of that wouldn't be doing the book any service or the character any service. So I decided to actually write it in, and that's how an original thriller became an erotic thriller.
Okay. I know you paused on the 1 or 2, but in other words, it's a good way not to give it away. But then there's multiple scenes within your book itself, so which is good.
Yes, there are. Yeah.
Yes. To give an
yeah,
opening.
I mean, what I like to think, my descriptive passages, I like to think are. Could be read by anybody, that it wouldn't turn people off. No bad language is used, just good, solid.
But there is a storyline.
This is how I set out to write the book.
Yes.
And to be honest with you, I think it's turned out very well.
The urge to fly came when I was in high school, watching airplanes go over my head from Lambert International Airport in St. Louis. P-51s, F-4Us, DC-6s. Then McDonnell Douglas started building jets, and I heard them going over. And then TWA and Ozark both flew over there. So I always wished I were up there flying instead of down on the ground watching. 210 for 91.
and to escape from this critical situation she finds herself in. Along the way, she meets some other women who become her close friends and help her to escape. Unfortunately, in the escape process, she finds that this person who is running as her pimp also has very powerful connections, and she's grabbed off the plane before leaving the Middle East. And there, things start to get a little bit, shall we say, confined. And I don't really want to give the ending away because it's a spectacular ending in many respects.
It's already drawing curiosity. Oh my goodness, that's incredible! You ought to put in part of that genre, suspense along with the thriller.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. You turned the dramatization of it into a suspense thriller, which is good. It's good. So you turned the Arabian into a pimp.
Well, yes. It would make a good film. It certainly would.
Yeah, it was not all peaches and cream.
No, definitely not.
That's good. That's real good. The other is there a message in it? A message in it that in this particular novel, in this one novel of all the novels that you've written, that you want the readers to grab a hold on, to grasp?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I write to entertain and not to judge or promote some form of crusade. However, there is a message within the pages of the Arabian, and it's one of warning. The trafficking of sex slaves across continents is as much a problem today as it was 40 or 50 years ago, and sadly appears to be a subject destined to be kept well below the radar of many national policing authorities. So this book brings awareness to individuals, to people. Just you have to be very careful nowadays, even going on holiday, to make sure that you let everybody know where you are, where you're going, and it's not nice to live in a world that where everybody's suspicious of everybody else. But often, unfortunately, it turns out that that was absolutely necessary.
Wow. Yes. I know we've run out of time, but I was kind of curious in that sex trafficking. I know it's scary out there, but did you had to? I mean, it's news everywhere. It's almost like you really didn't have to do any research. But did you do any type of? I know I threw this out there, research with the sex trafficking, to tie it in with the what she's going through?
Well, unfortunately, as I said, I was in Dubai, in the Middle East, in the early 1970s.
Close to that close to it, right? It's close to that relations.
Living on top of it.
Yeah,
and, it wasn't something you could easily ignore.
Is it almost somewhat like, I know it's like fiction with a few non-fiction characteristics?
Well, yes.
Based on certain true life events.
Historical fiction. Obviously, it's the story itself in its completeness is not true. It's not a diary of real events. But in many ways, bits and pieces that I've taken my personal knowledge of these situations that happened in Dubai. I think probably some of them are even still happening today. You have to be careful. And yes, a lot of it was written from first level experience.
Yeah, that's the author's creativity.
Yeah,
that's where creativity is formed from some experiences that you can actually put out, where it draws emotion, and feelings to gravitate to the book. That's what I'll call, as you're reading a book, if you're reading it and it starts visualizing what's going on, then the book has just transformed into a movie. So you're not really reading it, you're looking at it, but you're seeing a movie forming. You're watching it. Then
Yes.
there's books that you just read, but that's all you're doing is reading, and they're just tired of pushing it away, and they go back to read again because that's all they're doing is reading. There was no visualization. There was no feeling where you actually pull or gravitate the readers in. But in your book here, that you're able to do that by your experiences, you're able to put on paper, that you're able to push it, on the envelope, and as well as the the sex trafficking and all that, where people are now being able to, identify, and it creates that movie atmospheric environment. If you understand what I'm saying, you actually the book's job is to create that environment where you can actually see it while you're reading.
Well, there's one thing, I don't often use the phrase unputdownable, but I think this book, it's written for women, with women in mind from page one, and I think that any daring lady who would like to pick up the Arabian, I think she'll find it unputdownable, and that would please me greatly.
Oh, okay, so it's a book mainly for women. Towards it for women, and it could be actually a great gift that guys can present to women.
Absolutely, that's exactly where it's placed.
Outstanding. And also for you, I would Quentin Cope, everybody. Yes, and for you, I would love to have you come back again because you're also a career author, multi-talented career author, and educator at that, which we're very grateful for. So I'd love to have you come back on the show to share any new books that's coming out, but as well we go back in time to your former books and rejuvenate those, let people know that you have more out there, more irons in the fire than just this one.
That's excellent. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Thank you. And so I enjoyed. I'm glad to have you on the show, and looking forward to see you come next time.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Steve.
You too. And everybody, I thank you for coming on the show and being with us. And I'm looking for all of you. You know what? Tell you what. We have some more great authors coming on board, and we'll see you next week. How's that? We'll do it that way. We'll see you next week. Stay blessed.
There's a place inside my mind unseen, dreams of you and I that just can't be, but I can keep them safe and locked away inside. In a perfect world where I control it, give me your heart there and I would hold it. But I know that just can't be reality. But please, don't you wake my daydream, 'cause it's so real it seems. Maybe someday I'll get my head from the clouds, but for now I'll just daydream. If you said to jump, then I will do it. Right into the fire and walk straight through it. If you knew, I bet that's just what you would say. I guess the only thing for me to do is never let you know just how I'm feeling, 'cause I don't want to know if you don't feel the same. It's a shame. my daydream, 'cause it's so real it seems. Maybe someday I'll get my head from the clouds, but for now I'll just daydream. 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 There's a place inside my mind unseen, dreams of you and I that just can't be, but I can keep them safe and locked away inside, inside. But don't you wake my daydream. Oh, so real it seems. Maybe someday I'll get my head from the clouds, but for now I'll just daydream. Don't you wake my daydream.